the guy that...
94.9 Zeta, that is Marilyn Manson, Dope Hat, and yeah, we got a bunch of them right here in the studio. Bunch of Dope Hats. They're filming, it's a documentary type, so it's a film crew, and they're doing a documentary on Marilyn Manson. Everyone who's known him, all the bad things we could say about him, but really, who would care if you said anything bad about Marilyn Manson? It's already in his book, really, and most of that, all this film's gonna be pretty much R-rated.
Oh my God, kill God, kill your mom and dad, kill yourself.
It is said that every generation can be defined by its music, and more often than not by the artist who creates the image. While some artists play it safe and mimic their counterparts, there are some that push the threshold and create entirely new genres of music. These artists are often a shock to the mainstream and cause quite a bit of controversy. But it is this controversy that gives fuel and gives birth to such rock demons as Marilyn Manson. He is not the first and probably won't be the last, because what is considered shocking and offensive to one generation may well become mainstream and widely accepted to the next. In 1987, when a freckle-faced kid named Brian Warner started covering the alternative music scene for a local rag, no one knew then that he would go on to become one of the most revered and most feared celebrities in America.
He had this attitude that's the first thing that I thought about him was that he probably got beaten up a lot as a kid. He had a lot of anger and hostility, but he was a very quiet person. You know, the kind that you expect is going to be a serial killer someday. You know, you have to watch out for the quiet ones. Well, he had this innate anger in him that would just be great for writing. I mean, he knew how to probe and get questions out of people.
I don't think you guys really want to hear that song. Fuck you. I want to hear next motherfucker gonna get my medal as loud as you can.
I remember he interviewed the Thrill Kill cult back in their evil days. And I remember Brian coming out of the interview basically shaking that he was never met somebody that bizarre and satanic, I guess he called them. He said he had like animal bones and feet, you know, around his neck, and he just totally was shocked by Groovy's whole look and everything.
I used to let him pick what bands he would interview, and one of them was the Thrill Kill cult. I don't remember much about the interview itself, but I remember afterwards he was freaked out by them. Man, they were really spooky people. They were just so weird. Were they devil worshippers or what? And when you view that in context as to what he's doing now, it makes them look like kindergarten people, you know?
After interviewing the Thrill Kill cult, Brian may have been shocked and inspired, but it didn't last long. In fact, Brian Warner claims that while he was writing positive reviews about bands, he was far from impressed by the whole scene.
We found a niche and we kind of got in there. And that's where I first met Brian Warner. He would get up into poetry, and he was writing for a local magazine, and eventually he came to us and said he was forming a band, and would we put him on stage? And we kind of like said, yeah, sure, you know, because Brian was that kind of guy.
I was always like the one into the music. He used to come to my warehouses and just hang out while I practiced. He was always into writing. He always wanted to be a writer, and wrote a lot of poetry. He would do like poetry nights and go and do his little thing at a poetry night at a club or whatever. Scott was like a master of a 4-track, and he, I guess, wrote some music and asked Brian to come along and you know, sing on it. I didn't even really know about it when he was doing it. He came after they recorded it and said, hey, I got this project. We're going to call it Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids, you know, and this is my idea, what, you know, how I want it to go, and, you know, listen to the music and tell me what you think, and it was cool, you know. I liked it.
Scott had all this stuff recorded, and
he came into the studio and he stood up with a friend of his, Brian Warner, who actually, I guess, took a megaphone or something and sang the parts. And we mixed it down and we released this CD called The Funnel Zone, which was released a week after we bombed Iraq.
So, with some material to sing and a couple of friends to form a band, Brian Warner was ready to flaunt his beautiful woman meets serial killer trademark and took to the stage.
I was one of the 21 people who saw them when they played at Churchill's for their first gig. And the first memory I had was that Brian was so nervous that he was afraid he was going to throw up before he went on stage. And I kept thinking, if he doesn't get over his stage fright, he's just going to die up there. But the crowd kind of liked it.
Well, when they first came out, I hated them. They were horrible. But I liked the fact they get on stage and do whatever the hell they wanted.
First show was at Churchill's Hideaway. Probably 30 people were there. But 30 people seemed to like it.
I'm Elisa. That's what Brian named me in the book. I don't know where he got that name from, but that's me. I met Brian back when I was about 16 or 17 years old at the Plus 5. Round and round and round you go, dancing, 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 whee! Brian comes up and he grabs my boob. I'm like, fuck you! I'm like that. Takes me for a ride. The big fat guy that was the manager at the time came out and goes, hey, the singer wants to apologize. I said, okay. I'll go back to her. I talked to him. He was he apologized. Seemed like a really nice guy.
I was picked Olivia Newton-Bundy because Olivia Newton-John was my first masturbation experience. When I was like 13, I was in love with her. We used to go to thrift stores and buy the nastiest looking disco clothes we could find. And I had just finished cosmetology school. So we went back to my school and we got a whole bunch of heads, the little mannequin heads that you used to practice hairdos on and stuff, and we just decorate the stage with all that kind of stuff, anything we could find.
21 people saw Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids that night, and that 21 was enough.
One way or another, everybody in the South Florida music scene either loved or hated Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids in the early 90s.
Enough to start the love-hate relationship that would make this one of the most controversial bands in the history of rock and roll.
This noise music, and I don't like it, but it's not my taste of music. But this is, yeah, they play what they like and it works. And that's often been the case. I mean, Marilyn Manson, I didn't like Marilyn Manson, but they played here, the kids loved it, and it's happened, so.
A couple of gigs, a few practices, and already Mr. Manson's band was on shaky ground.
I was doing my own band at the time, Collapsing Lungs, with Perry, who was the original keyboard player in Marilyn Manson, Zsa Zsa Speck. Zsa Zsa, like I said, never really wanted to be in Marilyn Manson. He's totally against anything remotely satanic or not really into the shock thing. He's kind of a low-key, mellow guy.
Hello there.
Perry?
Yes.
So when this interview came up, you know, he's got his things going on in his life now. I guess he didn't want to stir up this past.
But it was on shaky ground that Brian Warner would spawn Marilyn Manson.
So Marilyn, why don't you introduce your kids to us?
All right, I'm Marilyn Manson. I'm on vocals.
Hey, I'm Gidget Gine, bass playing, body piercing, and skin peeling.
I'm Daisy Berkowitz, guitar.
Hi, I'm Dunaway Gacy, and I'm into keyboards, and I really like little boys, too.
I even saw them. They didn't even have a live drummer at the time. In place of the live drums was a playpen, and there was some chick in there. They were feeding her raw eggs, like in the movie Pink Flamingos.
It was pretty cool. They just never had a drummer, and at the time, the whole being a band thing was, I mean, Ministry just came out, 9 Inch Nails just came out, so people were gradually dealing with bands that didn't have a drummer. But Brian knew he had to get a drummer eventually. It just added.
So I remember they had talked about getting a drummer, and it wasn't soon after that that they got one. And it made a dramatic difference. I remember the first time I saw them with the drummer, and it was really cool. I mean, it was just a lot more energy. And I was kind of worried they would really change the sound a lot, and the sound evolved.
Fred, I don't know his Marilyn Manson name, what is it, Sarah? Sarah Lee Lucas. I was in a band with him before he was in Marilyn Manson, and he always had leg problems. I guess he had some football injury, and he had a muscle disease in his legs. So he had always a problem, I thought, keeping time with his kick drum. So after we left the band, Brian was talking about getting Fred into the band, and I had discussed with him, you know, the problem that Fred had, and that he was a good drummer, but, you know, this would be a problem, I thought. And Brian, I guess, didn't really think so until years later, when, you know, I guess his legs got worse and he wasn't able to keep up with the Manson standards, so he was let go, I heard, not too pleasantly.
The decade started with the first human drummer joining the lineup of the Spooky Kids, and for the Reverend Manson, there was no turning back. The band attracted a following, and from there produced various self-released cassettes, including Big Black Bus, Lunchbox, and Grist a Line, to name a few.
I think they saw an opportunity and ran with it. It's the American way.
This opportunity just happened to lie in Brian Warner's own backyard. The South Florida music scene was ripe for something new, something with an edge.
Back then, the club scene in South Florida was so different. There were so many live venues. There's not a lot of support down here in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. You know, and Miami's more of a tourist thing. They rather go to a house club or a techno club and dance. They don't want to see a live band. You know, they get more out of dancing and, you know, rolling, I guess, tripping on ecstasy than supporting a live act, which is kind of unfortunate.
So the stage became the backdrop for the wild and outrageous dramas that set this band apart from the others.
Chicken livers and chicken feet being stomped on the stage, which was carpeted, then around the room on the dance floor, and in corners and crevices that you could never get it. And of course, that night, a Haitian crew, cleaning crew for the nightclub coming in, and whatever bad voodoo, you know what I mean? Seeing chicken feet, they didn't want to mess around. So it was kind of like, you know, trying to convince them, it's just garbage. Clean it up, will you? Come on.
I guess I met Brian for the first time at Squeeze when I was bartending there. He'd come in all the time and sit in the dark corner and just sort of watch people. Took me by surprise how professional he was. The Easter show was actually my topless debut. I had never performed naked before or without a top or anything, and they had me tied to the cross. And even backstage, he's putting the grease paint on my nipples and doing the ab cuts like he does with the grease paint. And it was all business. It was all business. He made me feel comfortable. He could tell I was nervous about being naked in front of the home crowd.
They were very interactive with their fans. They were very creative with their flyers. They were very creative with themselves. I know of one show I wasn't there for, but I'd heard it was some sort of New Year's show where instead of, say, the champagne toast or the ball drop, they had a piñata filled with chicken guts that they released upon the crowd.
At times he would he would go to a butcher shop and get like hearts and gizzards and things, throw them out in the crowd. And people didn't know what they were. They thought that they were some kind of party favor or something until it hit them in the face, or they actually grabbed it and they found out that it was blood and gore.
These one-act plays of gore and goth began to attract several major record labels, and eventually the attention of Nine Inch Nails frontman Trent Reznor. And in 1993, the break came, when, having dropped the Spooky Kids moniker, Marilyn Manson was signed to Reznor's Nothing Records, a new division of Interscope.
I was part of their record release party here. What was that like? It was a lot of fun. Marilyn Manson played in the Lizard Lounge. They did an acoustic set, which included the first version of Sweet Dreams. Then they had local bands come in and cover their songs. And it was a great event. It was just amazing. It was a Wednesday night, but it felt like a Saturday or a Thursday.
But when Mr. Manson was not performing on stage with the Spooky Kids, he was still in the spotlight, pulling attention with his crazy antics both on and off stage.
A couple of years ago at the Ambassador Club, the Impotent Sea Snake show, Brian was in the crowd. He tried to get into the act on the show, and he ended up on the stage, which they invite people on the stage. It's a known thing. But there was a baby carriage that the clown had, which he's no longer with the band. Brian ended up in the carriage with his ass up in the air, and they got him in the show. They pulled his pants down. They shoved 2 fingers up his ass, and he went screaming and running out of the club like a little faggot with his pants around his ankles. And that's the infamous Ambassador Club story.
It was fun, though. He'd come by, and he'd be there for like an hour, 2 hours during the show, and just answering the phones. He'd, like, get off on answering the phone. He'd play, like, this character, this really warped janitor, and just, he liked to fuck with people.
I was walking down the street in South Beach where I lived at the time. I saw Brian. Bastard! He goes, why come in the studio recording portraits? Our new album, wanna hang out? They come up with this idea from out of the middle of nowhere. They come in and they bring these bags of meat. And they go, take the meat and put it on me. So he puts the meat on me, put it in, he had a steak on my head. You're a fucking bastard! With hot dogs, 2 hot dogs in the front, 2 hot dogs in the back, hanging by a string. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. That was about it.
When we were promoting that show, Brian was drawing these fucking pictures, man. They're unreal. Like, he had the fat lady bent over getting fucked by the Dr. Seuss cat in the hat, with the dildos and all that kind of shit. And he had pictures of all the Ambougalard cast. He had us all, me with the muscles. He had Dan like screaming with the metal fists and shit. He had Jordy with his cock out. He had everybody, you know, sketched down to a T.
What I was trying to do at the Slammies was recognize the hard music scene. Now, Ambougalard is probably most noted now for being the band that spawned Twiggy Ramirez. Twiggy got up there, or Jordy as we called him. He accepted the award. He thanked, I believe he thanked George Lucas and Darth Vader among his many people that influenced him at the time.
I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Dan Montana. I'd like to thank Bob Franquez, George Kokoris, Chad Steinhardt, Barry Alpert, Sean Rogers, Darth Vader, George Lucas, anybody that voted for me. That's it.
I had Mr. Manson present the award for national release, which I knew Saigon Kick was going to win. And when no one from Saigon Kick showed up, Brian took it upon himself to invite Jordy up on stage. This was before Jordy joined Marilyn Manson. He was still in Ambougalard at the time. And if you watch the video clip, you'll see Mr. Manson introduce him as Jordy White, and they get together up there. And they proceed to toss Saigon Kick's award into the mosh pit.
We'll let Jordy White accept it, because he's the next best thing to Matt Kramer.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody want to smash it on the dance floor? Unless they're here to accept it. I guess we're going to have to smash it on the dance floor. Oh, you hit a girl. Are you all right? I didn't mean to hit you. Love is on the way.
From the clubs to the Slammies, Manson was everywhere that music was. And it was during this first year as a signed band that Brian Warner finally recruited the one band member he thought was a perfect fit for the Manson motif.
I remember Jordy used to be this little metal kid, almost looked like a troll. He used to just kind of wander the hallway like in his AC/DC shirts or whatever and trench coat. Always looked dirty.
Man, Jordy loved to whip his penis out and just show it to people because he was so proud of it. I mean, it was not that, you know, there's anything wrong with it. I'm not that way, but it was pretty impressive. He would like be standing in the hall of the hotel, you know, and just like pull it out and just like whip it around like it was a piece of rope. It was nuts.
I remember Jordy was in a band called the Ethiopians. I don't believe I ever saw him. They had a little buzz about him, and then he went and joined Ambougalard, which was the death metal band of South Florida. Really nothing like Marilyn Manson is now. They had the hair thing down. They could do the swing. I don't know if Jordy still swings.
Marilyn Manson had emerged, and in a very big way, the band had everything it needed, including an image that would soon propel him to superstardom.
When it pertains to Marilyn Manson, I think he evaluated and he looked at the entire music scene, and he felt that for him to advance, he had to do something different. And the vehicle he chose was Satan. I think he doesn't believe it. I think he's using it, and very well, to his advantage. I think if it was real and he really believed it, then I think that he's gotten a little sick.
What do you think about all the, do you think it's an act? All it's like makeup and Satanism and stuff? Do you think it's like Ozzy Osbourne, Alice Cooper, all an act? You know?
Wait a minute now, wait a minute.
Wait,
Ozzy Osbourne,
right.
Alice Cooper, no.
Alice Cooper, no. Ozzy Osbourne, he bit a head off a rat.
Yeah, he did right on the
That takes the balls, that takes balls. But this Marilyn Manson, I looked at his picture
and you see some of these groups can't even fucking think of their fucking names, like Joe Shit in the Ragman and fucking 9 Inch Nails and all that fucking other weird shit.
See, it's all a farce, man. That's why I don't understand these religious zealots. They tell these kids, he's the Antichrist, stay away. They need reverse psychology. Kids, go ahead. He's a phony, we're not gonna waste our time. Go waste your money, it's an act. Then we'll see how popular Mr. Manson is.
More of the satanic stuff came after we left. It started getting into that direction, and Perry was like totally offended by that stuff.
But Perry, a.k.a. Zsa Zsa Speck, would not be the last to leave the Manson camp. No one could stop Brian Warner, because just like his namesakes, Manson soon began to find himself surrounded by a family of fans.
And so I shot pictures of them when it was just Brian Tatunik, Perry, Scott, and Brian Warner. This was my first professional one with the band here. That was shot in Brian's parking lot of where he lived. What happened with my relationship with the Mansons is once they went national, they were starting to get a hell of a lot of fan mail, and Brian asked me to run that for him because he trusted me to handle the money and to, respond quickly. This is the original master copy of the reply letter for everyone that wrote to the Marilyn Manson family. Brian put this together, pasted it all, and I ran it off for him and sent this sucker out. This was a typical fan letter. This is the envelope it came in. This is, part of the reason why I would quit. This is what somebody sent. Can I swear on this? Says, hey, you assholes, what's taking you guys so fucking long to respond? That was my fault. This is a letter written in blood by a 12-year-old from Los Angeles, California, saying he's on Valium and liquor, and when he would get drowsy, the son would lead the kid down to the basement, and he would hold him down on a mattress, and you know what I'm talking about, that sort of thing. This is from a 12-year-old. Here's another one from Yorkville, Illinois. And this one says, let's see, may maggots eternally feast upon your flesh and innards, and of course your pleasantly bloated cadavers, and always remember hugs and kisses. P.S. As you decay and rot among the regurgitated feces and mutilated corpses, always remember I love you. That is how people showed their love to him, by saying wonderful things like that. And I guess you can probably see why I would quit doing that. Thousands and thousands coming in a week, I just couldn't take it anymore.
He says to me, I want to fuck you. I'm like, I don't know about that. I fuck you so hard in the ass. You love my big black fucking cock. He just start fucking me from the behind. That's bullshit. I'm on top of him to begin with. Bro, let me put it this way. Guys were in the room, and I couldn't get his dick out. Brian, you still have that problem? How would you like to eat shit and die, motherfucker? I cannot help it, but I've been fucking him for a while. The guy's come back here and he's fucking me from behind. Oh, by the way, when I was fucking Steve, Brian comes over and he's like, yeah! It was really stupid, but that was better.
I always thought they were one of the best local bands around, anyway. They put on a good show. Anyone that sets things on fire on stage is okay with me. This whole thing is, this face is Marilyn Manson, actually. We used to go, the time I painted this, they played at a lot of clubs down here, and every time we'd go see them, he'd end up doing this thing, but with pulling his hair. And, you know, he kind of looks like a witch, so I painted him as one.
In the early days, I loved them. I thought they were great. You know, it was fun. It was back then. It wasn't like they were taking themselves so seriously. You know, it was fun. You know, throw cow parts out into the audience and squirt chocolate on people and shit. You never knew what they were gonna do, and it was kind of fun back then. I think now they're taking this whole anti-Christianity thing too far. It's just not funny.
But some people looked beyond his controversial stage antics.
Brian is a really nice guy, man. Brian is a very intelligent person. Brian had a plan, and he started with it, and he's finishing with it. When Brian was here, he was a young man. I remember when he started this band. I remember when they had chicken feet hanging from the stage, you know? But his whole thing is showmanship. People misinterpret showmanship of being sick or insane, but it's all about a show. That's what the young people are asking for, and he's just giving what they're asking for.
I saw that it was more than just a gimmick. Now, I mean, there was real music going on there, because my first introduction to them was listening to the tape. And, I mean, there were songs and ideas and lyrics and concepts and, you know, and talking to Brian, I mean, it was all right there.
But not everyone loved Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids, I fucking hated them. Well, at the time, it was Ambrugillard and thrash, and metal was coming about, and it was a really big thing, and then here comes this fucking freak, Marilyn Manson, and the Spooky Kids.
And you got a fat lady on stage and
I got a fat lady on
stage
stage
with eggs being cracked over her head.
and he fucking comes with all his makeup and shit, and acting all weird and trying to suck dick on stage and stuff, and it just, I don't know. I hated him. I couldn't stand the music. It just was not for me. Didn't like him at all. But now, I must say, I gotta have some kind of respect for the guy. He definitely chased his dream and he got what he deserved. I mean, very creative guy, excellent performer. And here I am playing in front of Metallica still.
Jordy, stop pulling your penis out at the show. I can't deal with the police anymore. I can't be disturbed while I'm sleeping during the show, in the performance. You guys.
Who am I? Who am I? He knows. That bastard John Tofar. Woo! We love you, Johnny.
John Tovar was unique.
The country band, the Mavericks, that won a Grammy. They first show was played here at Churchill's. In fact, that show there was when Scott came up to me and goes, "Hey, I got a great idea, Marilyn Manson and Spooky Kids." So it's pretty amazing, and both Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids and the Mavericks had the same manager, John Tovar, eventually.
His look was one of, think Johnny Cash from Columbia, right? Black hat, black coat, black t-shirt, black jeans, black boots, and it was, Jim Gallagher, how are you doing?
Everybody, you know, would do a Tovar imitation. Everybody. And, you know, the Mansons were just like brutal, brutal. But they were brutal with everybody. I mean, it was fun.
It would be funny because you'd go to a show of any of the bands that he managed, and he'd be in the back row sleeping. It could be a showcase in front of like 10 labels, and he'd be sleeping in the back. I guess he was narcoleptic.
He could fall asleep anywhere, anything, doing anything. I mean, like at a strip club, he could fall asleep, you know, with like naked chicks all around. But in the van, he would fall asleep, and I don't know who did it or why, but they just took to whispering things in his ear, just, you know, fucking with him while he slept. And for some reason, they whispered vanilla milkshake, and he reacted. He woke up.
Vanilla milkshake. Vanilla milkshake. God damn it.
Start singing Neil Diamond songs, he'll wake right up.
Wait, what's the song that we sing?
Sweet
Caroline, dum dum dum.
He's out.
He's fucking out, man.
I mean, the guy, you know, had a great track record. Nuclear Valdez, Mavericks, Marilyn Manson. I mean, he knew good music when he heard it. He had great ears. That was the whole thing. I mean, he really did.
Any musician in South Florida that's played any venues will know the name John Tovar.
The Marilyn Manson family grew, as did the band's worldwide notoriety. And anyone who is willing to delve into his graphic autobiography will learn about the characters that are becoming a part of Manson's legacy.
The book is over-exaggerated in some areas. Hey, wait, I forgot to tell you about the shower part. I'm too old for being naked. Naked is only for when you come in. So, I want to wash the meat off of me, not the meat that took the meat off. The meat was gone. I want to wash the smell of the meat. Why get naked if you can't come? Scott comes into the shower with me. You're not supposed to let little girls play with you, you fucking bastard. It turns out it was like talking a little bit, and he goes, man, those guys are pushing me. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's just a shy little, cute little sweet guy. I'm gonna hit the cameraman in the dick with my thing. And he's naked. The guys from Manson all come in and they're like, God damn, when did you get such a big fucking dick? I'm like, man, you've got a big cock. I'll give you a golden shower. Oh, they were trying to pee and everything. Twiggy was aiming in the toilet and he tried to pee on me and everything. I got pissed. I took a roll of toilet paper and I peed on it. And I threw it towards the camera. You suck. You're a fucking bastard. They took a fish head and they threw it in the shower. But that was after I already got out. And Scott was staying in the shower.
But not all of Marilyn Manson's followers were of the fly-by-night nymphomaniac persuasion. The sadistic leader of this now world-famous band had a softer side.
To me, the nicest thing about Marilyn Manson was Brian's girlfriend, Missy, who was a sweetheart, who in those days I told Brian that she's too good for him. And I'm just sorry that she's not with him to enjoy all the effort she put in to help him get where he has gotten.
When I first met Brian was back in the summer of '92, actually at a Beastie Boys concert. He was there with his first kind of long-term girlfriend, and name withheld, of course. And he was with her, I was with a bunch of my friends, and we had seen each other before just because of the music scene or whatever. And at the show, we kind of made eye contact and whatever, but he was with his girlfriend, and I wasn't going to try and pursue anything. So after the show, his band was playing later on that week, at the weekend or whatever, at Washington Square. And he was passing out flyers for that show. And as I passed, he made sure that he came up to me and he's like, hey, you know, what's up, blah, blah, blah. Here's a flyer for my next show. I really want you to go. If you can, bring a paper airplane and a bottle of Jack Daniels. And I just kind of looked at him knowing perfectly well that I was never going to be able to get a bottle of Jack Daniels, being that I was like 17 years old, already underage, you know, for any sort of nightclub, but, you know, paper airplane thing I probably could do, but didn't happen, never went. So the next weekend after that was the Slammy Awards, and he was with Jordy at the time, hanging out at the Button. I was there another time with my friends. Ran into him then. Jordy and I were friends before Brian and I were friends, so he introduced me to him, and he was, you know, I gotta get your number, and, you know, I'm going away to Tampa this weekend for a show, so here's my number, I'll call you, and we ended up getting together after that.
And then there were those who would, in the Reverend Manson's mind, turn against him and pay for it later.
Basically, Brian got arrested in Jacksonville after a show. During the show, apparently he had his 2-foot plastic phallus on. He was stroking it and squirted out a liquid onto the crowd. And Jacksonville is a home for 3 Christian Coalition type organizations. They really don't cotton to that. They don't understand it like we do in Fort Lauderdale. So they arrested him. I got the police report. Also, Jessica from Jack Off Jill got arrested that night, too, for something.
Jessica getting arrested, charged, but not convicted of prostitution with Manson in Jacksonville created a great story for Jack Off Jill's bio. Any sort of controversy is great press for any band.
So I put Brian's name in the paper along with Jessica's name, because anytime someone gets arrested, that's what you do. I still can't believe that Brian Hugh Warner got so bent out of shape because I printed his name in the paper. It doesn't seem to be a big deal now. I mean, his name's in the paper all the time, but at the time, I guess he was still living with his parents in Boca, and he didn't want his name in the paper. In the paper, we called him what he wanted, which is Mr. Manson. But when you get arrested, you go by the name on the police report. So if you're arrested in a porn shop and your name's Paul Rubens, that's what goes in the police report, not Pee Wee Herman. But he thought he was special. He thought that he should have a special exception. So he not only doesn't call to talk about it, he actually has Jessica from Jack Off Jill call and say, Mr. Manson's very mad at you. One moment for Mr. Manson, and then he gets on the phone, and basically with this attitude like I'm supposed to suck his butt, like I guess all the other local writers did.
Koretsky was just a fire starter, just because Koretsky did anything he could just to push Brian's buttons, just because he wanted Brian to call him or whatever.
So he called me up and said not to use his name again or there would be consequences. And I said, like what? And he said that I would have to look over my shoulder and worry about my physical well-being, although I don't remember the exact words. I said, are you really going to do something? And he said, no, not me, my fans.
I think Brian called him up and left him some sort of death threat.
And he just repeated, look, I said, don't use my name. And I guess at that point, I think about it, I probably even laughed. I didn't mean to be disrespectful to a guy that wears dresses, but he basically went off and said a whole bunch of other stupid things that I later put in a column, which really made him mad. And apparently Laura Werder, who was running his fan club at the time, said he was throwing stuff against the wall, cursing my name, which sort of made me happy.
Manson once described his girlfriend as the only person left that he was capable of feeling any love for, and through a rocky 6-year relationship, Missy became the closest person to Brian Hugh Warner. A major part of his personal and professional life, Missy knew what made Manson tick better than anyone else.
Brian's parents were really funny. I don't know, I'm sure you've heard, everyone must be like, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's kind of true. Brian's mom, Barbara, had these pet mice, and they were like, not the small mice, but like rat-size mice, huge, like water rats, white with red eyes. Anyways, she had this one, and it died. She didn't know what to do with it. And I go into the freezer, and I had no idea that this rat had died or anything like that, because I was just coming back to the house, and I wasn't living there at the time. So I open up the freezer, grab ice or something, and see this big, huge saran wrap ball mess in the corner of the freezer. Jesus Christ, the hell is this? Fucking rat that she had taken, dead, wrapped it up, thrown it in the freezer, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, Barbara, what? You can't put a rat in the freezer like this. Well, you had the little lizard in there too, and no. No, after I told Brian that, he was like, oh, jeez, there we go again. Always, like, weird things like that. His parents were really cool. Really, 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 really cool, supportive. Want nothing more than the best for their son, no matter how fucked up, stupid shit he would pull at home. But they're really, really, really super cool. Besides the fact that she put a dead rat in the freezer, but.
I have to say they are a bizarre couple. Kind of, I guess, the Brady's on acid or something.
His parents were mainstream America. His father was a businessman. His father had been in the service. And all his father and his mother wanted to do was help advance him to reach his goal.
They've always been, like, kooky. His mom, recently, I was over at his parents' house, His mom has like a collection of rats. She wanted to give me one. She tucks him in, or two of them she has to tuck in. Two of them can't sleep unless she tucks him in to bed.
Ah, Papa Manson, any influence on Mr. Manson? I would say yes.
Hugh always had a thing for, like, the younger girls at Brian's show. Not that he would do anything, but just, he was always the guy that told the dirty jokes.
Like, when we were back in Marilyn Manson days, like, I'd go and hang out over at his house, and it'd be like, we'd have like a couple girls in the room and people that his parents didn't even know. And his dad would come in the room in his underwear and just start talking to us, scratching himself.
He was always telling dirty stuff and always trying to make everyone laugh and show off and try and be weirder than his son, but I don't know. He's cool.
But the Reverend Manson had hard shoes to fill, even for good old Dad. For now, Mr. Manson was about to face his biggest adversary, mainstream America.
There were these really, really, really scary times, I remember. Brian's in this Mormon, town where, it's all about God. And in the middle of the show, he was told not to rip up the Bible like he did every other show out there. He said, listen, not this show. Don't do it. If you do it, you're gonna be fined. They're gonna, throw you in jail. Who knows what's gonna happen? Well, of course, you should have never said that to him. It was ripping up pages of the Bible. From then on, it was just chaos. After that, every show there was a problem, especially like in the Bible Belt. Death threats, bomb threats. People, I remember he would call me before a show and he's like, well, we got 2 bomb threats today and a death threat. And I'm just like, Jesus, I'm gonna get a phone call after the show and be like, there was no show because your boyfriend was assassinated outside, and the people, that's when they were picketing up and down. They were trying to boycott the shows. And the holy rollers are praying for, his life and this and that, and God save him and save all the kids that are listening to this crazy music.
Now, with the controversy brewing, Marilyn Manson had come into his own. But what of Brian Warner? What was he like off the stage? His autobiography chronicles some of the famed Manson escapades in great detail. But we were able to obtain rare home video footage which profiles Mr. Manson in a slightly different light than his carefully devised media persona. In this home video, we see Brian Warner and his clan up to their usual antics. 2 girls from Orlando were nice enough to let the band stay at their house. And when the girls went to get the Mansons some food, well, I bet they never thought this would happen.
All right, somebody go to town with those underwear right over there.
Here, buddy. Let's check out the crust.
Who's gonna smell
Let's find the crispy spot.
Oh my God. Oh wait, let me back up and focus on that. Is it brown?
Yeah, it's brown. It's only brown, man. Look at that.
Oh, that is incredible. What is that?
That's another crispy spot.
You gotta get the light on this side. You gotta get the light. Oh wait. It's got dirty crotches.
Oh, this one's clean.
Perfect. Do something to it though. Rub it on your balls or something. That is so juvenile. That's awesome. Okay. Now the toothbrushes. Come on. Make sure you turn. Hold on.
This is the wet one.
Everything the way it was. I was going to do that. Dig up the toothbrush, stick a lot. What is that? He put it up his butt. That's for goddamn sure. Who turned out the light? You put it up your butt or did you just rub it? It bristles and all.
Here, we see Pogo trying to get high from liquid paper. Remember, this is before they sold millions of records.
Oh, whiteout. Are you gonna? Is that whiteout? Yeah, that's the good stuff. Oh, do not inhale. Intentional misuse. This is the good stuff.
And it worked just as good, man.
You did it? You did some?
No, I didn't. Go ahead and try it.
Yeah, good. Get a load of that food.
Camcorder?
We've all heard of Brian Warner's interest in porn, from hanging out with Tracy Lords and Jenna Jameson, but we never knew he was into doggy porn.
Come on. Show me your fucking ball. 35. Come on.
Good evening, I'm George Wilson. The House showed its support for President Clinton's
It's a girl?
plan today, rejecting two Republican alternatives. Senate votes next week.
You like that, huh? Look at you. You like that, huh? Dog pornography. Come here. Come here. Come here.
Mr. Manson's persona of an antichrist may not be too far from the truth. The next footage you see may be cruel to some, or just Mother Nature to others.
Don't stop the camera. You filming?
I'm filming.
His heart is beating fast. Good night. There's some shit in the corner. Whoa, whoa. Good night. Get that on film. Get that.
It's going.
Oh, look at him. He's crazy. He doesn't know it. Get the shit coming out of that. Good, Mr. Blonde. You get to munch that ass. Oh, he's got it by that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that rabbit. Hey, stand over here so I don't get the eyes.
When the camera's rolling, Brian Warner can never be boring. Here, we see the Mansons being spooky in Spain.
Well, that's scared of kids, buddy.
If I start to the left, then I'll say about the left. Right? I'll let that.
No, don't go there. Hey, guys.
Freedom, although freedom is an abstract concept, you want me to face that way?
Hey, everybody don't
Is
move.
this from-
Get the fuck on the floor.
Freedom, as in freedom of speech, is an abstract concept. Cake represents the freedom and the ability and the freedom to pursue knowledge and the wealth of knowledge. Censorship and limitations on things such as the Bill of Rights. So that is the dichotomy of cake and sodomy, and that's what we're all, well, not all about, but that's what tonight's show is about.
Going back to when Jessica and Brian and everyone was in the studio all the time, we were all hanging out a lot back when Brian was still like in a local band. Hadn't been signed yet, but still trying. We would take off and go on these little excursions to Orlando.
You can videotape the pale hot. Videotape that. Did you eat it?
We would take off and go on these little excursions to Orlando, drop acid and, you know, get followed around by the Disney agent police officers because we were cutting in line or, you know, messing around with little kids or fat women.
Jody, you go on that side over there. Jody, you, no, over on the other side. Banana milkshake. Ah, there he is. Now pull out your dick, Jordy. Pull out your dick. Oh, I'd like to know you.
Here we see Brian Warner's more playful side.
Tip it on backwards?
calls on TV.
No, because you'll show it to your parents.
No, I won't, I promise. Just
No,
let me
you
see.
show it to your parents all the time.
Hang on a second. Take it out.
Lyrics a cappella, courtesy of Brian's one-eyed little man.
No, no dirty movies. You're going to show it to your mom.
Brian made some funny crank calls, and here he and Twiggy are listening to them.
We like that mixed with like kissing, kind of like Iron Maiden with the techno kind of on the top. No way.
Even rock stars have to go to the bathroom, but only Mr. Manson would bring in a video camera and film himself. Notice that even back then, the whole androgynous idea was in his head. Brian sees his namesake, but thinks she's really a man, baby. Mr. Manson paying homage to a famous demonic statue in Spain.
Say hi.
Look at me. I'm the devil.
Say hi. Hello. Say hi, Sean Bevan.
Hello, Sean Bevan.
But if anyone truly knows Brian, it's the woman formerly behind the man. Missy is probably the one person who could set the record straight on just about any of the Manson rumors.
The worst thing is when, you know, Brian's on tour or whatever, and here I am, I'm out at my local bar and hanging out with my friends or whatever, and then you get this guy that comes out. Hey, you're that girl that goes out with Marilyn Manson. Yeah, whatever. You know, who are you? What do you want? I heard that he got his bottom 2 ribs removed so he could lean down and suck his own dick. Did he do that? Did he really do that? Jesus Christ. What do you think? Well, I don't know. It was those type of rumors. Oh, and then he was the kid that was on The Wonder Years. Paul. There's a little bit of an age difference with these people. Do they not know that? Things like that just would drive me crazy. It's like, how can you be so stupid?
After Trent Reznor's Nothing label signed Marilyn Manson, they were not supposed to play any gigs in South Florida. But having the need to constantly perform, Brian Warner created a novelty band called Mrs. Scabtree.
The whole Scabtree thing, when everyone got involved, and I think that was like the funnest thing anybody down here has ever done. You know, no one else has done that and been successful at all. Not that it was successful, but you know, it was probably the funnest thing everyone can remember.
But it wasn't fun for everyone.
I guess they wrote a song about our bass player's girlfriend, and he didn't really like it that much. And being that we were bandmates, we kind of had to take his side on the whole issue.
Caused a lot of fights, pissed a lot of people off just because of some of the stuff that they wrote, but besides that, it was fun. People still talk about it now.
Where's the fucking singers? Come here. Fuck right. Jessica.
Hello.
I came to practice one day and it was a big like stir up. What's going on? We're gonna kill Marilyn Manson. We're gonna fuck him up. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? So they told me the story, and every time we went out, I'd see Brian Warner out, and he'd dodge me and hide, and be like, his girlfriend would be driving the car by the warehouse, and he'd be like reclined in the seat and be like, holy shit, this big motherfucker's gonna kill me, you know? But I didn't give a fuck. I thought it was kind of funny.
It almost got me in really, really big trouble because Brian wrote this stupid song about this one girl, name withheld, of course, about some STD, you could call it. And after the whole thing, they ended up playing the show out and knowing damn well that this girl was going to be out there in the audience watching, listening. They just continued on with it, used her name in the middle of the song, the whole thing. So, of course, the girl's totally livid afterwards. After the whole show, comes up to Brian and Jordy where we're standing at the bar, and I'm standing there, Jessica's standing there, comes up, fuck you, can't believe you went through the da-da-da-da-da. Spits in his face and throws a drink on Jordy. And I'm like, the loyal girlfriend, I'm like, oh, what just happened, you know? So then she flies off into the bathroom, and of course I go after her. Got her pinned up against the wall, this poor girl. Jessica's just like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? You're gonna kill this girl. So then finally everything stopped, and it was just, after that it was like the talk of the town that I almost killed this chick. But it was kind of funny when you think about it. If you go back then, it was good, it was fun. But it pissed a lot of people off. He didn't write nice things about people at all.
With the press hounding him and preachers denouncing him, Manson was enjoying more publicity than any other celebrity of the time. The more outrageous the stunt, the bigger the story. He had a solid image, and many were trying to cash in on that image.
Jackoff Jill wants their music to stand alone. Even though image may be important, at the end of the day, the kids love music.
Jackoff Jill is one of those girl band things.
Jackoff Jill was the female knockoff of Marilyn Manson. They were probably a little cruder than Marilyn Manson at the beginning.
They are the most wild women that you could ever want to meet. They are the true estrus posse, I would call them. Most definitely. I know they're considered to be the female Manson, and I guess that's not such a bad thing.
The original lineup, being all female group, just so perfect. And just her approach was, I don't give a fuck about anything, you know. I'll spit in your face, I'll say cunt, I'll say dick on stage, and I challenge you to meet me on my playing ground. You know, it was just perfect.
When Jessica started Jackoff Jill, actually it was really funny because Brian was the one that thought of the name. And I can remember we were all sitting around over at her old drummer's house. Her name was Tenny. And she was thinking of a name, and they're coming up with this, and they're coming up with that, and nothing's really working. And Brian's like, well, how about Jackoff Jill? She's like, yeah, that's it, that's it, that's it.
Well, you said the people from Jackoff Jill wouldn't do this interview or whatever. Jessica, I guess. Doesn't surprise me.
Remember the interview?
She's
No,
like,
that
excuse me, can you
no, she
please?
goes, hey, he wants to interview me in here, okay? Can you just give us a few minutes? Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Fucking
They're
cunt.
like, fuck off.
When Jack Off Jill first came to LA, they came to stay with me at my single apartment. So there was the four of them and me stuck in this 2-room apartment, and it was magic. Oh, I'll tell you about the show at Al's Bar. There was me and 2 of my friends, and it was one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. And at the end of it, when Jessica was covered in blood and candy and goo and whatnot, I was entranced. I was sold right there, just like most of Jack Off Jill's fans are at the end of the show. Jack Off Jill videos on every TV, 24 hours a day. Jack Off Jill all the time, coast to coast, 24 hours a day.
All I know about Jessica and Jordy is that Jordy supposedly stole Jessica's wardrobe and created his look from Jessica's look, which was actually Courtney's look anyway, so, which was actually like Babes and Toyland's look, and who knows, the list goes on. But anyways, I don't know about their relationship really. I just know like Jordy wears Jessica's dresses, and I guess still does. Now they have Scott, ex-Marilyn Manson, in the band, and I'm sure he's added a lot to it, and I think they have a new drummer as well.
SMP came at a great time to help us out. He recorded on our EP, Covetous Creature, and he toured with us. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors.
There's so much like them in image-wise that they got to say everything they can to get away from it. They
But
got
they,
to.
please, they don't though.
What?
You know,
Image-wise?
image-wise, yes, but
That's
in
what I said,
interviews,
image-wise.
She like will
Sound-wise,
drop-
they don't sound that much like them, but image-wise, they're fucking, come on.
Am I arguing?
No, yeah, you did. You fucking argued.
No, you're fuck you. Fuck off.
But while other bands and loyal fans all but worshiped the Reverend Manson, the road to stardom wasn't paved. And on the inside, it was a rocky ride from the start. The members of the band that called themselves Marilyn Manson kept changing, and friendship was the price Brian Warner paid each time he decided that someone was on the outs.
I guess he met Brad. Brian used to be a fan of Saigon Kick, and we'd go to all the shows and stuff, and Brad used to be a Saigon Kick heckler and stand in the front row and just totally rag them out that they would have to jump off stage and actually have a fight, you know, like get physical with them. So we were out front and south one night, I remember, and Brad was out in the parking lot. He just got chased out of the club by Saigon Kick because he heckled them so bad they had to stop playing. And I guess Brian like tried to go over there and fight him. I don't know if they were in fighting or what, but they weren't friends, so I don't know how the whole him playing bass came about, but I know at first they hated each other.
What was his name? Gidget?
Brad.
No, what was his name in Manson?
Gidget Gain?
Gidget Gain or something.
Ed, after
well, I replaced him in a band, but it was probably best for him because when he met Brian kind of saw Brad. He saw the image of what he wanted to represent. It was in Brad. I mean, Brad was the image of that band. Brian had the good vision, and then he got Scott, who could play quirky
Scott
stuff.
was hopeless though.
Well, he
Brad
played-
was the band.
Yeah, but
Scott is a good player, but image-wise, he was hopeless. Brad was the guy. He was the man. Definitely.
All right, well, that's coming from a girl who had a crush on
Hey,
the guy at the time.
all the girls had a crush on fucking
But I
Brad
mean,
at
they
that
all
time.
And they had this long-haired fucking freak transvestite bass player that all the girls used to love. He was like a cross between like the Spice Girls and fucking Winger. And as soon as he started shooting up heroin, he's like the only one in the band, I think, that did all these drugs. They gave him the boot. Goodbye, you're gone.
Brad was definitely, I think, had the Marilyn Manson image, which Marilyn Manson was trying to show, like do drugs and be a rock and roll star and all that, and that was Brad entirely.
They got rid of Brad because he did drugs, but then they ended up like being the band that like, I mean, not the band, but they're like, you know, they totally like drugs are cool.
I remember when Brad was on his way out of the band, he got to record on on Portrait, the first album, down here, and he was actually out in LA too. But Brian was just like at wit's end with him at that time, just because it was, you know, if he wasn't out trying to score heroin the night before, then, you know, he was looking for it that day in the studio, and these trampy, sleazy women are coming by the studio, and, you know, every day there was something else. And it was like killing Brian, because Brad was like his best friend. Brad was completely like his best friend, and he was the one with the style and with the girls, and he was, you know, Mr. Casanova, and, you know, he was great. Brian loved him. They spent a lot of time together, but then Brad was just going down, down, down. You could tell, and, you know, if he wasn't falling off the stage because he was so high, you know, in the middle of a show, then it was something else, or he wasn't showing up to practice, or whatever.
I remember seeing the last show they did with Brad, and I knew it was going to be the last show they did with Brad. It was, I think it was at the +5. He was just really messed up. It was really sad. And I mean, I felt bad, because I mean, here he is, he's part of this band that are gonna make it, and he just couldn't get his act together. And so it's like, kind of on the one hand, I thought, well, it's really cool that the band is, you know, intolerant of drug abuse. You know, I don't think they're intolerant of drug use, but drug abuse certainly. And I know Brian was always really concerned about Missy and the friends that she would hang out with. You know, a lot of heroin use going on in the clubs. And but then you hear stories about them themselves, and so I don't know what the real story is. You know, well, you know, are they hypocrites, or did they fall off a wagon themselves, or, you know, dabble a little bit, or, you know, you don't know what to really believe.
One time Brian needed a ride to go to see Brad, and Brad was actually in rehab, and Brian was just like, you know, I don't think I can tell him that he's not going to be in the band now. At this place, you know, a kid will just die. So we went to go see him, and what happened was Brian came back and he was just like in tears. He's like, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. And he's like, you know, I'm losing my best friend, I'm losing a band member. He's like, this sucks. And he just came back and he was just like bawling, and it was horrible. But, you know, shortly after that, they had like an intervention with him that never helped. And then after that, he was out of the band, but he still, you know, recorded on Portrait. He never toured with them or anything, but that was that.
Some of the decisions Manson made in the early days are coming back to haunt him in the form of lawsuits, ex-band members who want some credit for Marilyn Manson's success.
You see Brian, he's on TV every 13 seconds, and Scott helped him get to that point. I mean, he played on the first 3 albums and everything, and you know, the guy, you know, he has to drive like a beat-up car and stuff. I think he deserves at least, you know, at least something, or at least what he's owed. And I think it's terrible that he has to go to court to get what he's owed.
Scott in New Orleans was pretty much the butt of everyone's jokes, sadly enough. But Scott is just, from my point of view, Scott's a really hard person to work with. I think he's stubborn. He, when he has his mindset in one way, that's it. You know, Scott's gonna do it that way, and he's not gonna listen to anybody else. He doesn't want to bend. And if he has to bend, then it sucks. Must suck if he has to bend. So Scott was just hard to work with, and then once again, Brian had it in for you, and you started doing stupid shit, then fuck you. One time in the studio, they took a plate full of all of Scott's picks, and they were all, you know, signed Doozy Berkowitz. And they threw them all in the microwave, set the microwave like on 10 minutes. Exploded everywhere, picks all over the place, and it was just, you know, it was hilarious for all of us, hilarious. And then, of course, you know, Scott comes in, what happened to my stuff? Well, I don't know. I don't know how it got in the microwave. I don't know why it melted all over the place. It was just shit like that. And then Brian and Scott just weren't getting along at all. And Jordy was writing half of Antichrist anyways, so fuck Scott, send him home. But then, you know, when it comes to that, it's like, okay, who's gonna tell him he's fired? You know, they've got no problem fucking with him day and night, but, you know, who's gonna tell him he's not in the band anymore? Which is probably the most important thing.
Manson was no stranger to rumors. Accusations of jealousy and temper tantrums plagued the band as member after member was ushered out.
The thing about Freddie was, not that he was a bad guy. Everyone in the band was cool. Everyone was nice. But if you did one thing, one little thing that got underneath Brian's skin, that bothered him for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month. That bothered him. So, and he would think about that, and it would just drive him insane. Little things. If you said something that wasn't funny in the midst of all your friends hanging out, then fuck you. I hate you. Go away. I remember on the Nails tour, Freddie used to take these like broncholators, and it would like speed, they were speed pretty much, and it would get him so crazy that he would just like bounce out of his stool trying to play drums in the middle of a tour, and then finally it was just like he couldn't even keep up anymore. It was just driving Brian insane. And then if it wasn't Freddie, making a fool out of himself, then it was something else. And then of course there was always jokes about Jessica and Freddie and that whole bathroom scene or whatever. But Freddie wasn't a bad guy.
Marilyn Manson, I guess, had this tour manager named Frankie. He used to be a bouncer. I guess he was a bouncer there, a head of security or something at a club we used to play at called Plus 5 Lounge. And he looked like Vince Neil without any sleep.
Frankie was, I don't think he was ever a tour manager. And his first tour that he goes on is the band's first tour that they go on, which was just sheer chaos. I don't think Frankie knew what he was doing half the time. But I mean, he tried really hard, and it's hard when you're friends with someone and you have to be their manager as well. And Frankie goes back to like the Plus 5 days, and Brian and Frankie were friends, and Frankie was, working at the Plus 5, and I think Brian figured out when you take somebody that's your friend on the road, they're not your friend when they come back, and it turned out really, really, really bad.
Eventually, it was Missy that had to go. After 6 years, the relationship ended.
The last trip we went on was to Europe, and everything was good out there, but yet I knew everything wasn't as good as it was. Not that it was like perfect because he was gone all the time or whatever, but coming back from Europe and being out in Europe, it was kind of like, the signs were showing up here and there, and I was just like, well, I should probably start pulling away from this because I know it's not going to go much further. So then when I came back home, and my birthday's in December, first week in December, and Brian was coming down for the Rolling Stones Smashing Pumpkins concert. As you know, him and Billy are tight, so he was going to come down and sing a song with Billy at the Stones show. And he's like, look, I'm coming into town. I hadn't seen him for like 4 or 5 months. He comes down or whatever, and I knew that he was like seeing other people, but yet I was seeing other people too. But this was like, I was going into this thinking, I'm like, okay, either, something good is going to come out of this or this is going to be it. But I was kind of leaning towards the fact that this is probably, closure right here with him coming down. But yet I was so excited to see him, and whenever we went to the show, and after the show, there was like a big party and a big explosion too between me and Brian because, both of us were drinking, and all these feelings just, didn't know where to go, and it was just like, didn't turn out good. But then, I have this mediator, and the mediator happens to be Billy, and he's telling me, you gotta just let it go. You guys love each other. Leave it at that. Go your separate ways. But you always have what you had, and that's what you always have, pretty much. And that was probably the best advice. And I knew too that this was probably it. But I mean, we're still friends. I still talk to him. We keep in touch. I always will keep in touch with him. I don't regret anything in the relationship at all, and I'm not bitter towards him because of it, so why not, So
you think he's gonna hate you for doing this?
Probably.
You don't think he will, do you?
I don't think so. I mean, it's not like I'm lying about anything. He'll just be, he probably won't give a shit at all,
Well,
He might, who knows, probably laugh about it, say what a dumbass I am, but I don't know. We'll see.
Manson wrote in his famed autobiography that there was no one else in the world who understood and accepted him as unconditionally as Missy did. There was no other girl he would feel that close to. The good, the bad, the rumors, and even more stunning, the truth. Marilyn Manson's rise to celebrity status reads like a fairy tale gone awry, a rags to riches story, with incidences of sexual and mental abuse thrown in along the way. And when it's all said and done, the Reverend Manson denies nothing and blames no one. He just wants to be hated for all the right reasons.
I think that Brian Warner, when he brought Marilyn Manson to the scene, did a very positive thing. And I think he's continued to do a positive thing. I just think he's being totally misread. You know, he's making us think. That's what we need. That's what rock and roll's supposed to be. And that's what he is. He's rock and roll today.
For everything that Marilyn Manson is, he worked hard to get there. He was the only person in a band in this town at 3 o'clock in the morning at Kinko's Copy Center hand-drawing his own flyers.
A lot of the labels I was dealing with always had asked me, did you ever hear of Marilyn Manson? And I was pretty much like, yeah, you know, they asked me about the band and everything else. Nobody liked them. I mean, I must have visited every major label, independent. Everyone passed on Marilyn Manson. And I don't know if it was because of their shock value or, you know, they didn't take it seriously. But now look at them.
Every album, they keep getting new members, and he keeps kicking out people and this and that. You know, if they piss him off, I guess he gives them the fucking boot, which is cool. But, you know, he's the one. He's the image of the band. He's the one all little kids look up to and jerk off to and slit their wrists to.
You know, when that Rolling Stone magazine came out with Brian on the cover, you know, it's like I knew they were going to make it, but just to see that.
Ain't nothing gets you richer to get your picture on the cover of the Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone.
Brian was always a perfect gentleman. I think Brian is to music what Howard Stern is to the radio. Shock people, and the more you shock them, the more they're going to listen. In his own way, he's a very intelligent person, very creative. I think a lot of what he does is completely put on. He's playing with the people, which is what shock is, to play with people. I believe I'm in his book, and he refers to me as the mafia type from Davy with the gold around his neck. Brian, if you see this, or if you hear, I make one promise to you. Next time I see you, I will put you over my knee and spank you, because I think that's what you need.
Hopefully they can survive physically, you know. Physically is the most important thing, because your health is far more than any fame or money. Far more important.
Every decade a band like this comes along for their shock value. I think they can have longevity if they change with the times, like David Bowie always did and Madonna always did, you know. But I think they milked their original image for what it was worth. I think they have to move on now to the next thing, bigger and better things, and I think they're going to accomplish that. I could see Brian definitely, who's, you know, the brainchild behind it all. I could see him doing it, because he's definitely a shrewd guy and accomplished everything he set out to do over 10 years ago.
By the time this documentary has been released, Mr. Manson will have reinvented himself once again. He has now donned a more Bowie-esque identity and is quickly shedding his Antichrist image towards a kinder, gentler Marilyn Manson. With a new glam look and some breasts, he is definitely becoming more Marilyn than Manson.
Marilyn Manson. Skinner, Deep Purple. Shit.
Really?
I like all of it. I like the Stones. I like.
I'm in the big 106 classic rock and roll.
But you don't like Marilyn Manson?
No.
Why? You a groupie?
No, it's just part of the whole music scene.
What about things like Jenna Jameson and Tracy Lords, things like that?
Can we not talk about that at all? Save whatever dignity I have left after this.
How did you meet Brian? When was the first time you met Brian? And you'll say, I first met Brian.
At the press bar.
Well, say that though.
Okay. I met Brian at the press bar.
Tell the whole story, how you met him.
All this film's going to be pretty much R-rated. But this I have for you, the band that Marilyn Manson opened for, their very first show. It's The Goods on 94.9 Zeta Goes Local. That sucked.
I hate Marilyn fucking Manson and the Spooky Kids.
You know, in talking to Brian, I mean, it was all right there. I mean, I knew the kid was going to be a star. That's a terrible line. Don't use that.
Then Trev puts in this video. It was a shit-eating video. How would you like to eat shit and die, motherfucker? People were eating each other's shit. People were taking a ladder and hammering a guy's balls down and ripping it off. And we're all sitting there by the studio. We're like, yeah, fuck off.
I mean, for a band to get their very first tour ever, to tour with 9 Inch Nails, who at the time was at their peak, you know, and open up for them, you know, I don't even think they knew how good they had it.
Brian's book, he kind of rags on a lot of people. A lot of them he uses fake names for whatever reason. I don't know why he uses some real names and some fake names. I guess he just wants to get sued by certain people. I have no idea.
I really miss metal. The fucking old days are the best. Back in middle school, I used to think Motley Crue's the most satanic out there. It's the most sickest, demented. You got a pentagram poster on your fucking wall, Motley Crue? Dude, you guys are going to hell and shit. But then I started liking, you know, Motley Crue and stuff, and they were the heavy thing going. I remember we'd go to the Sportatorium, and I'd try and dress up like Nikki Sixx with fucking egg whites in my hair and all this kind of shit, and I had black shoe polish under my eyes and everything. And then I was feeling all tough and bad, yo, I'm Nikki Sixx. And then I'd go there, and there'd be all these high school kids that are bigger than me, and they'd be like, hey, go home! Go back to mommy with that fucking makeup on your eyes and all this shit. And I almost got my ass kicked trying to be like Nikki Sixx. So it was really a real test of my metalhood to go to shows looking metal and everything else. Because when you know you're so into it as a little kid you didn't know. Kind of like these kids today. I mean, oh my God, the way they're dressing now. They're following Manson the way I used to follow Motley Crue, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a beautiful thing. At least they definitely struck a chord with the young kids today. You could say that.
Now he's the ruler now. He's just, you know, changing his image just like he's become more glam, this glam figure like Ziggy Stardust back in the day, which is cool. You know, he's ruling his own domain. But all these little kids are going to start running around buying like glitter makeup and feather boas and shit to look just like him. And he's got to stop calling me. He fucking annoys me all the time. He keeps calling me, leaving messages on cool tips. You know, I keep giving him these tips on what's next and what's hip and cool, but he won't leave me alone. What the fuck is wrong with him?
He's one of the big things right now.
Yeah, I know. I just read it today.
What do you think about all that makeup and stuff that he wears, you know?
I never read that because I don't like
Give me a break. I mean, everybody's got to do what they have to do. You know? They do. But he's getting way out there, man.
because we have an award. Where's the award? The award's right there. This is for... Hello? All right, this is well. All right, this is for Missy! What's up, little lady? Missy! Missy, real tough little girl. Whatever. There you go. All right. There you go. The toughest girl in the Let's hear it from Missy. All right. And this is how the song goes.